Hi, everybody. I'm Scott, and thanks for joining us again today for another episode of the In Medicine and On Medicine podcast. As always, this is Susan. Hi, Susan.
Hi.
Susan is an Oriental medicine doctor and East Asian medical practitioner here in the Las Vegas, Nevada Valley. You'll see her information come across the screen every so often if you'd like to get in touch with her for an appointment, questions, comments, which you may also do in the comments section below, and we'll do our best to get back to you with answers to any questions. Today, we're going to be talking about, tinnitus. We're talking about hearing.
Tinnitus and deafness.
Yeah. Tinnitus, deafness, that ringing in your ear or that nothing in your ear. And, not being able to hear is pretty serious. So where do we begin with tinnitus?
Well, I thought one thing that might be kind of interesting is how the ancient physicians looked at it. I mean, this is going back, thousands of years.
So going back into the classics, and we're going to have any tales of blue people or mysticism or anything here?
No, not today.
Okay.
But, so let me just back up a little bit. So we have talked about the different organ systems and how they're kind of like an umbrella, how like we have the heart system, and the heart includes the heart, but it also includes part of the psychological and psycho-emotional self, and it also includes something we call the small intestine, and it also includes like sweat, and it also includes a bunch of other stuff, and all the organs are like that. So under the kidney system, the kidney umbrella, the kidneys are which includes your real kidneys, but also includes the urinary bladder, and also includes the bones, and also includes the ears and hearing, and also includes
part of the kidney system. That's interesting.
Yeah. And also includes part of our psychological or psycho-emotional self that we call our will.
Stupid question. Is there a connection? Reason why it's in the kidney system? What the connection is that was figured out?
Because that's what they figured out.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Just take that answer,
just
son.
the way it is. Okay. So, but I guess I'm being glib, but basically, I'll answer your question in kind of a roundabout way.
Okay.
Okay. So the kidneys are considered like the foundational energy of the body, the energy upon which all of the other organ systems rest. Okay. So they're like the foundation, and all the other chi and blood and etc. of all the other organ systems rests on the foundation of the kidneys. Okay. So the kidney energy declines as we age. So older people tend to not have the same kidney energy that they had when they were younger. And what physiological or physical symptoms manifest as we get older?
Huh?
Exactly. Hearing loss, tinnitus, sore joints, sore low back, sore knees. This is all kidney stuff. So that is how they kind of came to the idea that the ears, especially of all what we call the orifices, which are, the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and the
Down
ones
below.
down there, that of all of them, that the ears and hearing were ruled or controlled or under the umbrella of the kidneys.
Okay.
So they didn't just make it up. I mean, they did it through observation, right? And they thought, well, when people get old, they don't always lose their eyesight, or they don't always lose, whatever, some other sense, but hearing tends to be impaired. So that was one of the things that they thought. So if you go back to the classics, and there's a million classics, and most of them say tinnitus and deafness has to do with a kidney problem. So like I wrote a couple of these down so that I could share them with you. So like in the Neijing, which is one of the really old-timey classics, it says kidney chi is connected to the ears. When the ears are harmonized, people can hear the 5 sounds. If the 5 zong, the zong being the yin organs, the lung, the spleen, the heart, the kidney, and the liver are the 5 zong. If the 5 zong are not in harmony, the 9 orifices will not be open. Okay. Then, so there's other ones that say, in the Jubing Yuan Huo Lun, sorry for my Chinese pronunciation, it says, it is pointed out that overwork consumes the kidney chi, and wind can invade the ear orifice as the etiology of tinnitus and deafness, and, quote, prolonged tinnitus can develop into deafness. Okay. Then there was a doctor, Liu Wanshu, who believed, quote, when yang qi and all living beings jump, the ears start ringing.
Ooh.
I don't know what that means either, but it's sort of.
But it was something that was observed, obviously.
Here is another classic where it says the etiology of tinnitus and deafness may be rebellious qi, wind attacking, or overwork. The treatment should be to open the ear, regulate the qi, and anchor the kidney. So one of the things that damages the kidneys is overwork.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so there's that.
What do we mean by overwork? Too much food, too much liquid, too much, or something?
Working too hard.
Okay.
Like physically working too hard, mentally working too hard, not taking adequate rest.
Okay.
So
we're not talking about the actual function of the kidney, so to speak, although we are, and then some, right?
Yeah. So we're talking about the Chinese kidneys, not your actual real
gotcha.
kidneys.
Yep.
Okay. So the kidneys in Chinese medicine are injured by overwork. Overwork being too much physical labor, too much intellectual labor, too much sex.
Ooh.
Yep.
Sorry, guys.
Can also injure the kidneys. Chinese have a lot of rules about that.
Okay.
So let's see. So then,
But what about consumption? Too much consumption? Or that's, again, a separate...
well, consumption and work are kind of two
kind of the same,
things.
okay. Kind of two different things.
Well,
okay.
aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So overconsumption would be something that would more injure the spleen.
Okay.
Right? Overindulgence.
Gotcha.
Right? In another classic, the Dan Xi Xin Fa, it says, deafness is all due to heat. Ooh, that's a different one. Mostly heat in the Xiaoyang and the Juyin. Okay, so...
Which means what?
Heat, we know, is one of the pathogens that cause disease, right? Heat, cold, wind, warm, dry, damp. Okay? So heat's one of those things. But we also know another thing about heat. It rises.
Right.
So heat tends to be something that rises, and we end up with heat problems up here.
In the head,
Yeah. And then the Xiaoyang and the Juyin, what the heck is that? Well, those are like old-time names for the channels. The Xiaoyin being the gallbladder channel and the Sanjiao channel or the triple burner channel. And then the Juyin being the liver channel and the pericardium channel. Okay. What does that even mean? The Juyin, the liver and the pericardium, is like the deepest level channel. And as opposed to superficial. Okay. And the Xiaoyang channel is right in the middle.
Okay.
So the Xiaoyang is sort of interesting because it's not in the exterior and it's not in the interior. It's in the middle, which causes a whole lot of problems when you're trying to work on the Xiaoyang or you're trying to affect the Xiaoyang because it's kind of like this. You know, it's kind of like if you've ever been driving along and a squirrel runs into the road and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to run over the squirrel. And then the squirrel does this. Like, which way is the car going to go, you know? And you have to go like, you know, and hope that you don't run over the squirrel. Anyway, I don't know why I thought of that. But anyway,
nice example.
it's maybe it's not the best example, but it's sort of that back and forth thing. So when you're trying to address a Xiaoyang problem, if you try and address it as though it's in the interior, it moves to the exterior. And if you try to expel it from the exterior, it moves to the interior. So the Xiaoyang is a really tricky thing to work on. So what it's saying in this classic, the Dan Xi Xin Fa, is that deafness is due to heat, and it's mostly heat in the Juyin, which is deep, or the Xiaoyang, which is neither interior nor exterior, which is also difficult to deal with. In another classic, it says, quote, kidney water dried out with blazing yin fire. Drain the fire in the south and nourish the water in the north. So the kidney in 5-element theory is the organ of water, right? So water can dry out, and water is yin, and so that can lead to what we call deficiency fire or yin fire or heat that's due to a deficiency. That's kind of a little esoteric, but anyway, so that's kind of another issue. So it's like it's usually kidney, or most of the classics say it's usually a kidney problem, but and this one said, well, it could be heat. One said, it could be that the kidney water is dried out. Here's another classic. A guy named Dr. Li Dongyuan said, quote, the clear yang qi sinking and the turbid yin qi ascends and blocks the 9 orifices. So if we look at the Tai Chi, which is the circle with the squiggle through it and the 2 dots, that design, okay, that tells us the relationship between yin and yang, right? They contain each other, they balance and harmonize each other, they generate each other, and they have to be sort of equal, and that's why the design is equal.
Mm-hmm.
And so it also shows like the relationship between how the yang qi descends and the yin qi ascends.
Okay.
Okay, it's like so. So if the yang qi is not basically, if there's some problem with the yin and the yang qi, and they're not containing each other, and they're not balancing and harmonizing each other, you end up with problems, and you end up with either not enough yang qi up in the head, or you end up with too much turbid, what's called turbid yin up in the head. So there's a whole bunch of reasons. So if the yin and the yang are not in harmonious balance, then you end up with problems someplace.
Okay.
Then for another one, there's a classic called the Ming Yi Jiazu, which says, quote, for tinnitus, most people treat it as a kidney deficiency, which is true. It does not work because the etiology is the ascending phlegm fire to the ears and severe stagnation of phlegm fire causing deafness. So in that classic, it says, everybody goes down this path and treats it as a kidney deficiency, but you know what? It's not. It's something called phlegm fire ascending to the head and blocking the orifices. So it's a completely different thing. So in the classics, they didn't agree. In the classics, they said, looks like a kidney problem, could be, could not be, could be wind.
How do you treat that then?
Well, first you have to kind of figure out, like, what is it?
Okay, so what are the
Right.
what are the causes? Or are you have more to tell us?
No. I just wanted to do the classics thing a little bit.
This all
Right,
adds
so,
up
like,
to
what's
what
the-
causes all this.
Right. So what causes all of this? So, you know,
And before you answer that, there's clearly from the quantity of entries here, there was a very recognized
a big debate.
debate, and this was very well recognized medical issue.
Yeah, for thousands of years. Yeah. So people had tinnitus and deafness, a long time ago.
Didn't start with rock and roll.
No, it didn't start. It didn't start there. So anyway, so we've got the classics. The classics are not clear. They're pretty clear. I mean, they're pretty much saying it's probably a kidney thing. But wind. We talked about wind as being a pathogen that tends to affect the upper part of the body, just the way wind affects the upper part of the trees, right? So there is a wind, could be a wind component. There could be a heat component, heat rising. There could be a phlegm component. Phlegm is like congealed dampness. So it's like something that blocks things and gums things up. And it doesn't have to be a physical phlegm. It doesn't have to be some goopy substance,
Right.
It can be like phlegm is on a continuum. So on one end of the phlegm continuum is like a hard mass, like a tumor. And then it gets like less physical, and then it gets into like thick, goopy mucus. And then it gets into like sort of thin,
Runny.
drippy, runny mucus. And then it actually on this end doesn't have a physical form at all. But we know that it's phlegm. We know that it's phlegm because it blocks things and makes things stuck.
Okay.
It makes things heavy. Okay. So could be heat, could be phlegm, could be wind, could be kidneys. That's what we're kind of thinking it is. So then we look at the etiology. Okay, so like what? What is going on? So the main etiologies are kidney Jing deficiency. So what is kidney Jing? Jing is one of the 3 treasures. It's the most physical form of qi. It's what we inherit from our mother and father at conception. It's like the foundational energy of the body. Jing can also be referred to as kidney yin and yang. Okay, so most people that have a Jing deficiency are elderly because the kidney energy declines over time. So kidney Jing deficiency is usually seen in old people. Okay. There's also another etiology called the clear young is not rising. Okay, so usually that's an overwork problem, that people have worked too hard either outside, or they've worked too hard at sitting at their desk, or they've just worked too hard, or they've exercised too much. They've gone crazy exercising at the gym. They've done too much, and they've injured their yang, and now they don't have enough yang, clear yang, to rise to the head, and so they develop tinnitus. Yeah. Another diagnosis could be chee or phlegm fire, or fire obstructing the orifices. So something, wind, phlegm fire, something is obstructing to the orifices of the ears. So something's blocked. Okay. That is usually more of an acute problem, or it's something that we suspect in people that are younger that are having tinnitus or deafness, rather than maybe something that we would suspect in older people. External wind can also obstruct the ears. So what does that mean? Well, external wind is a pathogen.
Right.
So usually when people are attacked by external wind, they have a cold or the flu. So this type of tinnitus or deafness would probably be the result of an external pathogen. So people get COVID, or they get the flu, or they get a cold, and then they end up having
So it's a
ear
residual
symptoms.
these as opposed to the
Yes.
actual disease or ailment itself.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So then we would look for, is there, did these people have, did they catch a cold or whatever? And then another etiology would be blood stagnation. Now, blood stagnation, again, blocking the orifices. So there's something blocking the orifices. So this isn't chi, this is blood. And one thing about blood stagnation is it usually hurts. So
Huh.
usually there'd be some sort of pain involved, or maybe injury.
In the ears, or
Yeah,
elsewhere? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
like maybe they got a concussion
Okay.
or something like that, and now they're having hearing issues. So we would look for some type of pre-existing traumatic injury there. So those are like the etiologies.
So when people come to you, I imagine that they come to you one of two ways. Tell me if I'm wrong. I'm having a hearing loss problem, or I'm having ringing in my ears, or you don't hear anything about it, and it's up to you to discover it in your diagnosis. So tell us a little bit about going down each of those
Yes.
paths.
Yes. Well, it is kind of interesting how, the things that people say and the things that they don't say. So one thing that's great about Chinese medicine is that we have the tongue and the pulse. So, people don't have to tell us everything. So I can take people's pulses and go, whoa, like their kidney pulses are really, really low. And then I can say things like, do you have low back pain or knee pain? How's your hearing? Do you have any tinnitus or deafness? Do you have, and I can go down the list of things that are often associated with kidney problems. And then they'll either say yes or no.
Okay, but what about when they come in expressing the problem? Where do you go first? Like, I'm having ringing in my ears. Where do you start?
Right. So the first thing that I would want to figure out is, because I'm an 8 principal girl, is I would want to figure out, okay, well, is this an excess problem or a deficiency problem? So usually, but not always, but usually tinnitus is an excess. There's too much going on up here, not enough. And deafness is usually a deficiency, not enough going on up here.
Okay.
So usually we look for excess and deficiency. We look for, is this an acute problem? Did it just happen? Or is this a chronic problem? Have they had this for years and years? The other thing I like to ask them is, what's the pitch? Is it a high pitch? Is it a low pitch? The high pitch tends, not always, but tends to point me in the direction that there might be liver involvement.
Okay.
And low pitch tends to lead me in the direction that it might be a kidney issue.
And what about frequency? And I don't mean frequency tone. I mean whether it's happening constantly, sometimes, or seldom.
Good point. Is it constant? Does it happen in the morning? Does it happen at night? Does it happen in the winter? Does it happen in the summer? Is there any pattern to it? Right. And then we look at the tongue and the pulse. So, like, for example, if we were looking at like kidney Jing, okay, well, if it's a kidney Jing problem, chances are the person is not young. Okay, so then it's like, okay, So what else is going on? So usually they have other medical conditions. Um, they can usually have other kidney deficiency signs like sore low back and knees. They could have had a chronic illness. Usually the tongue will look deficient. Often their tongue will look red and what we call peeled, meaning
okay.
it doesn't have any coating on it.
Interesting.
The pulse can be really deep and thready, like really hard to feel because it's like, where is it? Because the kidney energy being the foundational energy of the body, if the kidney energy is weak, then the pulse is like in the basement, right? So, and like there's a formula that's good for tonifying the kidneys, which it's a kind of a classic. It's called Jingui Shenqiwan, which is like a kidney tonic. And so that might be a formula for somebody that has a kidney Jing deficiency that we might start out with, or we might take that formula and then modify it with something else. Then if it was something like due to overwork, then we'd want to be like, okay, well, like what's going on? Like, are you stressed out? Like what's happening? I mean, I just saw a patient today who he's not really stressed out, but he's working really, really hard. He's started this big business, or he didn't start it. He bought this business that was failing, and now he's like built it up and oh my God, and put millions of dollars into it, and then now he's taken over these other territories and other states, and it's like this huge thing. And then his wife just had surgery, and she has a business. So now when he gets home from work at like 10 o'clock at night, then he does her business. So I mean, he's just really, really working really, really hard, and so that kind of can set you up for having getting too run down. So.
Stress can be a cause of
Yeah.
hearing issues also? Okay.
Well, yeah, and often stress is a liver issue or affects the liver system. So sometimes if the pitch is high, sometimes I might be, is there a liver issue here? Is there stress? Is this an overwork issue? What is this person's lifestyle about? Like my patient today, like if he would have said, "Oh, I have ringing in my ears," I would have been like, "Yeah, I don't doubt it with everything that you're doing." So and again, there's if it's something due to the clear yang not rising because of overwork, because people are using up all of their yang. Then there's like a formula called Bujang Hichitong, which is like a formula for raising the clear yang. So, that might be a formula that people would start with and maybe modify it for something specific for the ears. Then if there's something obstructing, if there's qi or phlegm or fire or something obstructing, then this would be more often in young people.
And when you say obstructing, you don't necessarily mean in the ear canal. You mean obstructing somewhere.
Obstructing the flow of qi.
Okay.
Right. So phlegm, fire, qi, it's stuck in the head, but it doesn't have a physical form. It's not like you can look in somebody's ear and go, "Oh, look, there's a gob of phlegm in there." No. It's obstructed by what we call insubstantial phlegm that doesn't have a physical form, but we know it's there because the ears are blocked.
Okay.
And I mean, I just had a patient a couple days ago who's like, "I feel like my ears are blocked." Well, they are blocked. They're just not blocked with something physical.
Right.
Right? They're blocked with
Interesting.
phlegm.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, so there's that. And then there could be external wind. So if that was the diagnosis, the person would have a history of, having some kind of externally contracted disease, a cold or the flu or COVID or some RSV or something like that led them to have this tinnitus or deafness that, had a relatively recent onset, right? Let's see. And then I think I mentioned before about the blood stagnation one. We would probably look at, is there some type of traumatic injury? Were they in a car accident? Did they, get a concussion? Did they have some type of injury or something like that?
And as far as treatment goes, you've mentioned age, injury, trauma, disease. Does it matter which of those things it is as you go into figure out your attack plan?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, that means everything. I mean,
Okay.
that tells us how we're going to treat it. I mean, if I have a patient who's 85 years old and has had tinnitus and they have serious kidney deficiency, I'm going to treat them completely differently than I would treat somebody who comes in and, is recovering from the flu and is a young person. I mean, and their tongue and their pulse will show us, it'll show, exactly. The tongue and the pulse never lie, right? So the tongue and the pulse will tell us exactly what the etiology is of this tinnitus and deafness. And so the treatment is completely different. That's one of the beauties of Chinese medicine, is that everybody is treated uniquely and individually. Whereas Whereas with Western medicine, they tend to treat everybody kind of the same. Like if you go to your Western doctor and you say, well, I have tinnitus, what are they going to do? I mean, sometimes they give people diuretics. I don't know if that really works. They just don't have a whole lot in their bag of tricks. Whereas, if you take 100 people with tinnitus and you send them to Chinese medicine, 95 of them are probably going to get a different diagnosis and a different treatment plan. We would probably want to use herbs, because herbs are great, because herbs treat the interior of the body and they also make things happen faster. So, like, especially if there's a deficiency, like, for example, if an older person has a kidney deficiency, one thing about acupuncture is it's good for moving and harmonizing and stuff like that. But to build something, to strengthen something, boy, herbs make that a lot easier, because herbs are like food. So you can really make the treatment progress a lot faster and have a lot more success if you use herbs as well. So everybody would get treated like completely different.
Okay, and what about intermittent versus constant? Does that matter with the ringing?
Oh, yeah.
As far as how you tackle it?
Yeah, because if it's intermittent, then usually there's some sort of pattern, and then that pattern will help us identify what is really going on here.
Okay.
Like, for example, let's say, I'm making this up, let's say a person has tinnitus early in the morning, first thing in the morning. Well, what do we know about the morning? We know that yin and yang, the yang comes up during the night so we can sleep, and the yang goes down. Yin comes up, yang goes down. And then in the morning, the yin comes down and the yang comes up so we can wake up. Well, if somebody's got tinnitus,
it might not be happening.
If somebody has tinnitus, right when the yang is rising, maybe there's a yin deficiency. That's where the yang is coming up like too much or too uncontrolled, or something like that.
Or the other's not moving and one is
right.
moving.
So maybe there's some yin and yang thing going on. So so that might point us in a direction. Also, if things change, if it's not consistent, then that's kind of a good thing, because then it's like, okay, well, when do you not have the tinnitus, and what's going on then? Like what's bringing it on? What is, and that can also really tell us, like people that get tinnitus after they eat a heavy meal or something like
Really?
that. Oh yeah. So then you'd be like, oh, okay, well then those two things have something in common. So I'm going to look for phlegm. I'm going to look for something like that. So there's that. Let's see, what else?
What about trauma from loud noises or booms or sports stadiums or things like that, and then you have a ring or something? That's the injury related thing, I imagine.
Yeah, that's kind of an injury related thing. And so it could be a few different things. It could be just basically traumatic injury.
Okay.
It could also be that type of lifestyle and that type of exposure has damaged the kidneys. So it could have led to a kidney deficiency kind of problem. I actually went to school a million years ago, 25 years ago, with a guy, Greg, I remember, and he was probably, how old was he? I was 40, so he was, I don't know, maybe 35, 32, 30, early 30s probably. And he, I guess, suffered from pretty significant tinnitus. And he had an interesting story, and I have to tell you, I don't really understand this, okay? But it was very cool at the time. He had a plate in his arm from where he had broken, from previous injury. And he went and he had the plate removed. And he said that while he was in the office, he was conscious, right? They just did a local when they were removing this plate, or they somehow numbed his arm. I don't know how exactly they did it. but he was awake. And he said the high-pitched tinnitus, as soon as they started taking the plate out, it dropped to a low-pitched tinnitus instantaneously. And then when they removed the plate, it went away. And the only thing, I mean, we were students at the time, the only thing we could really figure out is that there are a couple channels here that go directly into the ear. So that was all we could think of at the time was, well, it must have something to do with an obstruction in the channel that was creating the tinnitus, and when the obstruction was removed, the tinnitus went away. I don't know if that was exactly what happened, but at the time, I and my other friends in school were speculating about how could that be. But it was a pretty interesting experience that he had.
Okay, so same thing as with identifying. Now with treatment, A, how do you treat? And B, does the treatment matter depending upon, again, whether it's injury, trauma, disease, or something else?
Well, one thing that we always do is we figure out, okay, here is the diagnosis. Here is the treatment plan. This is what we're going to do. We're going to treat you once a week for 8 weeks, and then we're going to reassess. We're going to give you a formula. This is the formula. We're going to modify it this way. There are herbs that specifically go to the ears. Do you need a kidney tonic? Well, what do you need? Do you need an herb for phlegm and fire? What do you need? Do you need an herb to expel wind? What do you need? So what I usually do, because I'm not the most sophisticated herbalist in the world, is I start out with a regular formula and then I modify it somehow. Okay. I take stuff out or I put stuff in.
And then what are you trying to achieve with the acupuncture?
To make the tinnitus go away.
But I mean, by doing what? By pushing what, where, and down?
Well, it depends. It depends. So if there's an excess up here, we want to get rid of the excess. If there's a deficiency up here, we want to draw more up here to take care of the deficiency. If there's a blockage, we want to undo the blockage. If there is like a fire up here, we want to descend the fire, or heat up here, we want to descend the heat or cool the heat. If there's phlegm or dampness, we want to transform that and get rid of that. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we need to do.
And then again, does it matter if it's age-related or injury-related or disease-related?
Well, yeah, that's what I just said.
Okay.
So the whole point is that we figure out a differential diagnosis based on the person sitting in front of us and why they have tinnitus, not why the last 100 people have
And then
tinnitus.
based on those three things, then your expectations for the treatment results will differ also, right?
Yes.
And be individualized in that regard.
Absolutely. I mean, of course we want a positive result. That positive result is going to change based on the person's problem, like what caused it, how we're going to treat it. An older person who has a Jing deficiency, that's going to be a lot tougher.
What happens if you go down your normal identification and treatment paths and don't get the answer, or is it always there?
It's always there.
It's always there.
It's always there. It's even there if we don't see it.
It's okay.
It's
so you
there.
may miss it, but it's still there.
If I miss it, it's still there.
Okay.
I just have missed it. So, and that's one of the things that we have the tongue and the pulse for, because they never lie. So they will show us what it is we need to work on. And it's just up to us to be able to see it and interpret it.
Acupuncture, herbs, what any of the other cannonballs in your arsenal that you use for this?
Let me think. Well, if it was a chronic deficiency problem, then I would probably want to use Moxa.
Okay.
Moxa being very strengthening. If it was like a blood stagnation problem, you might need something called gua sha, which is scraping along the channels.
You cup for anything like this?
Cupping, maybe. Okay. Maybe be able to use cupping. Could be. So, yeah, it kind of depends.
Okay. So now, what kinds of things do we do lifestyle-wise and in our life that we might be bringing this on?
Okay, well, go to the music store and buy some decent earplugs that musicians use when they're performing on stage, and wear those when you go to loud events.
Okay.
I mean, that's like the easiest thing that people can do.
It's like my kids will send me pictures of them with my grandkid at a ball game, and my grandson, who's a toddler, has earphones on, but my daughter and son-in-law are sitting there.
Don't. Exactly. And nowadays, most people are very cognizant that having an infant or a small child in a noisy environment like that is really bad. And so you see, parents all over the place that have big ear protectors on their kids, which is terrific. But where are their ear protectors? Yeah, they're not there. So
Okay.
that's really important, and most people don't even think about it.
What about there's a permanent hearing loss there. So can you effectively do something about that, the ringing in my ears, if I'm having close to some level of deafness?
Well, it really depends.
It really depends. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. I mean, if there is like an organic physical issue that has caused deafness, then acupuncture is probably not going to help you.
Okay.
Like I knew a guy who had a condition, I think it was a hereditary condition, where the little bones in his ear, what is it? The malleus, the incus, and the
Oh my
stapes.
God. Listen. Okay.
No, the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. They calcified and grew together.
Ooh.
And so he tended to, he had to go have surgery to have them broken apart, like over and over. And, that's like, if those little bones in your ear are calcified and, then, acupuncture is probably not going to help you. You're probably going to have that surgical operation. But yeah,
Do you just treat the physical problem, or are you able to do anything about the emotional problem? Because people who have tinnitus say it's maddening. So are you getting rid of the maddening by treating the tinnitus, or is there anything you can do while you're treating the tinnitus about the emotional strain that this puts one under?
That's an interesting question, because as we've talked about before, there are different psycho-emotional aspects that are attributed to each of the organ systems. So tinnitus is usually related to the kidney system, not always, but usually. And the kidney system contains a portion of our psycho-emotional self called our will.
Okay.
Which is, the part of us that perceives what we need to do and carries it out. That sort of forthright part of ourselves that like gets things done. So if that is deficient, then people would feel a higher level of frustration. Okay. If there's more of a liver component, the liver is a very emotional organ. And it's also prone, when it got issues, it is prone to being affected by anger and resentments. So if there's a tinnitus that it points a little bit more in the liver direction, people might get more frustrated and more angry. So there's that, but in Chinese medicine, we don't really separate that out. We don't really separate the psycho-emotional aspect from the physiological aspect. So we would be working on those things simultaneously, because we don't see them as being different.
Gotcha. Okay. Anything else we've left out?
Boy,
what about
No.
other than the earplug thing? Any general hearing care advice to give people from Chinese medicine?
Well, it's really just like everything else, like everything in moderation. And also, the kidney is usually the organ involved in tinnitus and deafness. So, protecting our kidney energy or keeping our kidneys as strong as possible is really super good. And how do you do that? Basically, moderation, not working too hard, not working too hard physically, not working too hard mentally, having a good diet, getting enough sleep, all of that stuff. It sounds corny and ridiculous, but you can get away with that when you're younger.
When you're young, yeah.
But it'll catch up with you when you're older. And so, like I always tell people, the choices we make when we're young, we live with those consequences when we're older, and it's true. And now, here I am living the consequences. I mean, and as are we all. So better to take some precautions and try and be a little gentler with yourself physically and psycho-emotionally, and that will only create a more positive and healthful environment, and hopefully you can avoid things like tinnitus and deafness.
Yeah, it would be a good thing to do. All right, bada bing. we talk about the lungs. I want to cough. Now we're talking about tinnitus. All of a sudden, I think I have this ringing in my ears. This madness. The madness is
Yeah.
approaching. So,
There's-
anyways, this is Susan Wellman.
Hi.
She is an Oriental medicine doctor and East Asian medical practitioner here in the Las Vegas, Nevada Valley. Let's not forget the boys this week. Marty is the gray wire hair. Leo is the black flat hair. They are brothers from the same litter and the stars of the show. I'm Scott. This is the In Medicine and On Medicine podcast. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Leave your comments and questions in the bottom. We'll get back to you, or you can contact Susan with her information that's come across the screen. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.
Bye.